The person I'm referring to in the video will be called the lady or the girl, and her name is Kenneka Jenkins. That's the person we're discussing here. The location we're discussing is in Chicago. It's called the Crown Plaza. The year we're discussing is 2017. She was found in a walk-in freezer. If I use the wrong term for it, I'm referring to the walk-in freezer. This is literally disrupting my ability to use the right word. Thank you for accommodating for me. She was found in a freezer in that building. Later, when it was left open with people walking in and out, it was still freezing. She had probably been seen by at least 1 or 2 people in the building stumbling around, so intoxicated, toxicity level, so impaired that walking was difficult. The area where this freezer was an area that was undergoing reconstruction or remodeling or repair. During that, or probably before that, cables in the area that were cut because they weren't needed anymore ended up with them either cutting a cable by accident or breaking it by running into it or something that carried a video feed from a camera that might have shed more light on this. The freezer in question did or did not have a specific type of door latching mechanism that would have made it easy or very difficult for her to open the door. It may or not. You will not get a straight answer because people on both sides of any argument you run into will emphatically say one thing or another but refuse to provide any proof. And because even in 2020, this happened in 2017, even in 2020 when I explored the subject, because of lawyers and activists not liking facts getting in the way of them being able to change the story when it was convenient, I wasn't able to find out any of that information, and you probably haven't either. Another claim you'll find is that she was seen on a video camera at various times. Times that are very different from the next video over. What I was asked back in March was to analyze the videos, or a specific video, to see if I could find out what's causing all these time and date stamp shifts. Well, first of all, the recordings that you're looking at, most of them, are fairly large files. The one I looked at as an example is supposed to represent a period of time just under 24 hours. It's supposed to. And the time and date stamps on it range from the 8th of the month to the 10th. The only way that can happen with a video that's up to, or even exceeding 24 hours in length, by the way the technical work works, the technical standards for the file format, or the company that made it happen by their equipment, is that the recording was started just before midnight on the 8th and ended just after midnight on the 10th. The recordings that you find, however, all start and end just after midnight, according to the files. This is how they're labeled. The file name itself is named after the exact moment it's supposed to start. In this case, 16 minutes after the hour on a particular day. And then exactly 24 hours, or almost, actually less than that, it ends at 4 minutes after the hour. Specifically 16 minutes and 7 seconds after the hour is when it started, and then it ends at 4 minutes and 27 seconds the next day after midnight. The hard drive file itself, now remember that's in the file name. I can change a file name. But if we assume it's accurate, then we have less than 24 hours. The hard drive file itself contains, or at least it did at the time I checked it, a Universal Coordinated Time, GMT time, uber perfect, nobody can make a mistake time of the 8th of the month at about 45 minutes before midnight. And the the file, depending on the way it's looked at from what it says on the screen, says another set of times and date stamps. We have a time range for the beginning and ending of the file. It doesn't matter which end either at this point. From the extreme of 3 minutes and 34 seconds after midnight to 16 minutes and 7 seconds after midnight, on two totally different ways of looking at the file set for that file. Because the file, by the way, was also uploaded a month later and some change. Onto a website, and inside of that file is a computer program that's a player for the video. And also in that file, it's a big single file put together as an executable. This is a stub and wrapper file. Is a bunch of little video files, or one big one, depending on how you look at it. All of which, or just one file of which, has a time and date stamp, but it's a file with a long file name, or file length. So how do you put a time and date stamp on something that could have been created over 3 completely different calendar days, depending on how you look at it? That's a good question. Nobody has an answer. Every single company comes up with a simple standard. They include the file creation date and last accessed or last modified date as the bookend dates. In the metadata, and in the file data, and in the executable wrappers file data, and then the final executable as a single monolithic piece, it also has that. That's 3 or 4, I'm not even going to count how many layers of it could be wrong. On top of that, Chicago is either 5 or 6 hours different than GMT, so that makes it impossible to get it correct. And it can be off by literally an hour, which would allow you to have that 1 hour, literally 45-minute kind of thing. Yeah, it's almost exactly caused by it transitioning for some reason between using daylight savings time and standard time for no good reason. Except, where does it get that time and date stamp from? Does it look on the internet? If you're running a security system that can access the internet, is that really a security system? Well, oh, yeah, and yeah, I'm sure it did access the internet to get the time and date stamp. I'm very sure of it. Absolutely dead-ass sure of it. But it also accessed local time separately. It is supposed to, because Greenwich Mean Time, Universal Time, whatever you want to call it, is almost internationally legally required not to have daylight savings time, and you know some jerk would try to do that. It's not allowed to change like that. And almost everywhere else on the planet, except Australia, the time and date stamps on a file can't be wrong by more than an hour. Okay, it'll be wrong by several hours. I'm going to explain how in a minute. But the minute mark and the second mark are supposed to be very consistent. They're not ever supposed to change. But again, Australia. Was it on an Australian server by any chance? No, it wasn't. But we could throw that in if we really want to just screw this up. So we're pretty sure that the recording started and ended, let's say 10 minutes after the hour is a rounded number, and that there was a 1 hour error because something somewhere forgot that daylight savings time existed. Now I'm going to add in another thing. On Windows, Macintosh, and Ubuntu Linux, the operating system can choose at random, even though there's no reason to do it, to change the time and date stamp on your computer by an hour. And then do it again if you restart the computer. Ubuntu is actually notorious for reclocking a computer over and over again in a test, while the Ubuntu guy tried to explain that as being valid. Well, let it have access to the internet. I'm going to keep turning it off and on until you admit this is a defect. They deadass wouldn't correct it. for a year. The company that makes the software that creates these files from the security cameras doesn't just say, you're not allowed to use local time, you have to use GMT, because that would solve the problem. The upscale product they sell includes the ability to not let you ever do that. You have to use Greenwich Mean Time. You can't use local time. Why? Because it causes these kind of problems. So I've covered this subject very thoroughly. In the previous video I covered it seriously, but I was trying to explain things. I'm not explaining it anymore. The time and date stamps on these files are only valid to the minute and the second, and the hour has to be assumed from someone else interpreting it at the time. And yeah, it is consistent whether you like it or not, because it doesn't have to be. Unless you buy the high-end product, it is not required to have the time and date stamps accurate at all. Internally, externally, in any way. They say so when you click the button. It just says this is for reference purpose only. You're supposed to compare videos with each other. And on that note, if the Crown Plaza had video cameras pointing so thoroughly that you could follow the entire pathway, you would yell police state. Yes, you would. And now we're going to get to what actually killed the lady. I'm not going to pronounce her name again because I'll fuck it up again. I've done it too many times. We killed her. Not the Illuminati hip-hop sacrifice community guideline strike-inducing videos you've probably seen. She went past people who could probably see this, but not necessarily, who did not interfere. She was with a group of people that may or may not have seen it, who also did not interfere. What is the actual cause of this? The Crown Plaza. The people who didn't lock the door open on the refrigerator. The people who turned on the refrigerator. The people who didn't lock out the work environment. Kenneka Jenkins died because she got drunk that night and was not able to take care of herself, and nobody else took care of her because we don't want to interfere with each other when we need to. One of the lawyers, I'm not saying which side, even provided falsified evidence of how the door worked. And people re-uploaded videos saying the same thing. We as a society allowed this to happen. And we shouldn't.